So the Thunderbolts movie has stirred quite an interesting discussion online. Right off the bat, 1 week before the release of this movie, critics have been calling it the best movie in the MCU since Endgame. You can take that however you like, but I wouldn't totally discredit Marvel for putting out some of the better pieces of entertainment in the past 5 years, or just things I genuinely enjoyed. Projects like Wandavision, Shang-Chi, Eternals, yes Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Loki Seasons 1 and 2, Moon Knight, Guardians 3, She-Hulk, yeah, The Marvels, maybe, Doctor Strange 2, Agatha All Alone, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Daredevil Born Again. I know a lot of you like to give Marvel a lot of shit for putting out quote-unquote garbage content because they didn't live up to the same level as they did in Phase 3. But you have to realize that this is an ongoing franchise that's been around since 2008, so it's like 17 years already. Compared to some of the other content Disney has put out in the past 5 years, it really is not that bad. Well, I guess the bar isn't that high. So if Marvel has made an effort to course correct in the past few years, why are there so many fans who are skeptical about Marvel's future, even after Thunderbolts' critical success? In my last video on the MCU, I talked about how ignoring the 5-year time gap from Endgame is the biggest missed opportunity in the franchise. And if they decided to set things up in the 5 years, I feel like people would have been way more invested in where they're going. So I think it's only fair that we break down what is actually happening in the past 3 phases. And let's just start from Endgame, where it left off. I'm not gonna explain everything in detail. I'm just gonna go into the general direction each project has left us with, to give you a better idea of why things have fallen apart. If you cast your mind back to Endgame, things are left very open-ended. It seems like everybody is just trying to live a good life. However, it really shouldn't be that way. And if you watched my last video, there is so much that they could do with the blip, even if you're not exploring the 5 years. However, since they were already sticking with the multiverse shtick, I think Loki should have been the first Disney Plus series to come out after Endgame, but instead we got Spider-Man Far From Home as the first movie after Endgame, which is both a continuation of Endgame and Spider-Man Homecoming. The problem with trying to follow up Spider-Man Homecoming is that we were introduced to Matt Gargan's Scorpion in the end credit scene, and it was setting up something sinister for the sequel, but we got a new villain, Mysterio, and complete absence of any mentions of the Vulture or the Scorpion whatsoever. Even after the end credits of Far From Home, they've completely changed the direction the franchise is going by having Mysterio revealing Peter Parker's identity to the whole world. The only time the concept of Multiverse is mentioned in that movie was when Mysterio told Talos that he's not from this world, but we've learned that this is not true. Now, Wandavision came out and it was a very promising series. We're left with White Vision flying off to God knows where, and Wanda hearing her children crying out for help somewhere in the multiverse while fully embracing her Scarlet Witch moniker. In my opinion, this series should have taken place right before Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, because there is one inconsistency I found that a lot of people overlooked over time. Wanda's children were crying for help. From what? And we never got to see that. And now we have The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is kind of a bad title for this series. This really had the potential to be one of the best Disney Plus series. We could have had so much backstory to why Sam Wilson is the right person to take on the Captain America mantle. but they chose to focus on the political drama instead. Anyway, we're left with John Walker taking up the US agent outfit and mantle, and Sharon Carter working with the government. To be honest, the whole thing with the power broker was kind of weird. I don't really know what they were going with that. And we never really see Sharon Carter again in the MCU. She should have shown up in the next project, which leads us to Black Widow. And once again, they deliberately chose to ignore the 5-year time gap. This film, as a retcon, contradicts what she said in the beginning of Endgame.
I used to have nothing. And then I got this. This job. This family.
Are you sure about that?
And what's this guy's name again? This film probably takes place in 2016, right after Civil War. The only characters who bother to show up at Natasha's cemetery are Yelena and Valerie, which is a huge disservice to what the character actually deserved. And most of the characters they introduced in this film don't show up until the Thunderbolts. These films are 4 years apart, and it has nothing to do with Multiverse, since at the time of Black Widow's release date, Loki was still running, so I just put Loki Season 1 here. Funnily enough, as one of the series that seemed like a side quest, Loki Season 1 ended up being one of the most impactful entries in Phase 4. This is the first series to acknowledge the multiverse and that Kang is coming, who at the time was foreshadowed to be the next overarching villain just like Thanos. However, I think the introduction of He Who Remains and the Kang variants was just a bit too early. This sets up Season 2 of Loki, but it doesn't set up the next project. And we don't get to see Kang and the TVA until 2023, which is 2 years later. Now from Shang-Chi to Doctor Strange 2, things have been much more connected thanks to Wong's presence in all of them. Well, except Eternals, unless you're thinking about this guy. Oh, and Hawkeye. And at the end of Shang-Chi, we see Wong coming to recruit Shang-Chi. It's clear that Wong has become a central part of the current Avengers lineup. Here, when he examined Shang-Chi's 10 rings, it suggested that the use of the rings has triggered some kind of warning in Comertage, alluding to multiverse, but we never actually see or have been explained to what it is. And in the second post-credit scene, we see Xialin taking over her father's throne in the 10 Rings to continue the family business. It would be nice though to see other San Francisco-based heroes, characters referencing them, like Ant-Man and She-Hulk. At the end of Eternals, we see Tiamat's body parts sticking out of the Indian Ocean, and this phenomenon is not referenced until She-Hulk in the next year, and it's not until 2025's Captain America Brave New World that we see Tiamat's celestial island and what it means for the future of the MCU. In the end credit scenes, we're introduced to 2 characters, Star Fox and Danny Whitman taking up his sword as Black Knight, with Blade's voice in the background, hinting at the future Marvel Knights lineup, but we have yet to see these characters interact or referenced for that matter. So although this film explores a little bit of the cosmic side of the MCU, it doesn't really move the multiverse plot forward. Now we have What If Season 1 that solely explores the concept of multiverse. We are introduced to the character of Watcher, who is a different iteration from the one we've seen in Guardians 2. This may be the only time I'll allow it not to reference other MCU projects, but it would be nice to see the Watcher narrating other films just to tie everything back together. I really liked how Marvel finished the year 2021 with 2 projects back to back, set around the same time in the same city. Like literally, Christmas came early in 2021. Not to mention, it was also the best year of my life. But I digress. What they were trying to set up at the end of Hawkeye is the reconnectivity of the street level Marvel, as well as the young Avengers. We got to see the closure between Yelena and Clint. You would think at this point that Yelena would stop taking orders from Val, but you'd be wrong, she hasn't learned yet. As for Hawkeye himself, I don't think he's ready to retire yet. He's only ditched the Ronin suit, and there's so much more you can do with his character in the MCU. As much as I liked what it was trying to set up, this doesn't mention multiverse in any way. But let's just move on, I guess. Well, Spider-Man No Way Home is a multiverse story, but it is more self-contained than trying to leave a lasting impact on the larger MCU, since everyone from the multiverse has gone back to the multiverse. We've never seen any other side effects from Doctor Strange's spell, besides that everyone will forget who Spider-Man's secret identity is. But I guess the symbiote is coming from Venomverse to the MCU, and it looks like Spider-Man will continue to bridge the gap between street level and Avengers level. Whew, I never realized how top heavy 2021 was for Marvel, so that's why people started turning away. So we got 9 projects in total in 2021. Marvel in 2022 was led by Moon Knight, which was the first standalone Disney Plus series of the MCU. This series probably takes place right before Doctor Strange 2, which would be around April to May, as suggested by this date range in the British Museum. We're left off where Jake Lockley is introduced and shot Arthur Hare in the head. Presumably, the introduction of Moon Knight paved the way for Marvel Knights down the line, just like Eternals did. And at this point in the MCU, we are introduced to Norse, Greek, and Egyptian mythologies. So although it didn't tie anything to multiverse, really, it was a welcome addition to the lore. It's a bit of a bummer that we're not getting a season 2 of Moon Knight, but it's safe to assume that he'll be integrated into a corner of the new Avengers team. Speaking of the new Avengers, I think Doctor Strange would make a nice candidate for the leader of the team. At the end of his second film, we see Doctor Strange taking America Chavez under his wing, who is probably gonna end up in the Young Avengers team. It's such a shame to see Wanda Maximoff go, especially with that comic-accurate Scarlet Witch costume we finally got. But it's entirely possible that we see an alternate version of her who is the daughter of Magneto. We don't know what the MCU 616 Baron Mordo is up to, and it's been 9 years since his first debut. It's one of those end credit scenes that will never get resolved, and it's very likely that the next time we see Doctor Strange, he is working with Clea to fix an incursion caused in this film in the multiverse. It hasn't had an impact on the 616 yet, so we're good. At the end of Miss Marvel, we're introduced to yet another group of corrupted agents, seemingly trying to do good, the Department of Damage Control. After S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, Sword, TVA, all filled with terrible people, we're left with a somewhat controversial reveal that Kamala is a mutant instead of an Inhuman, which brings up the question, where are the Inhumans? Earlier this year in Doctor Strange 2, we saw Anson Mount returning as Black Bolt. I was low-key one of the 7 people who got hyped seeing this character back again. But never mind, the Inhumans are probably one of the most underrated teams of Marvel, so it kind of bothers me how they're not utilizing their existing lore, which is far more interesting in my opinion than trying to rush into introducing mutants. And if she is a mutant, there must be other mutants in the MCU. It's just a whole wild rabbit hole they dug themselves into. And we got to see Kamala Khan swapping place with Carol Danvers. Hey Danvers, stop goofing around and help the Avengers. Now we got Thor, Love and Thunder. You would think that they would try to tie in the multiverse thread with the cosmic side of the MCU. You'd be wrong. Besides the Guardians cameo at the start of the film, no references to Loki, no Watcher, no hints at Kane. They wasted both Gore the God Butcher and Jane Foster's storylines. But hey, we got Thor's surrogate daughter fighting alongside him, Sif coming back, and Hercules, who probably only 5 people cheered for. Unless we get to see him in any other projects before the 2 Avengers films, he's gonna end up joining the ranks of Baron Mordo, Scorpion, Black Knight, and Blade as unresolved teasers.
Here comes the I Am Groot mini episodes, in which the entirety of Season 1 takes place between Guardians 1 and 2.
Don't worry about it. And at the end of She-Hulk, we see Emil Blonsky getting sent back to the raft for 10 more years. But this doesn't mean that we won't see this character ever in the next few years. Or at least I hope that's not the case. Because here we see him way bigger than we last saw him, and who knows how big he's gonna be the next time we see him. And yes, he did appear in Shang-Chi briefly when fighting in the ring. This along with the reference to Tiamat's celestial bodies taken out of the ocean plays She-Hulk very closely after Eternals. The reference to Wolverine though is a bit tricky, as adamantium has not been yet discovered in the MCU at this point. The Wolverine here could be a product of the multiverse. She-Hulk also sets up the future of Hulk and Daredevil. So despite most of the fanbase hating on the series, it's actually quite connected to the larger universe and promising for the street level, the Avengers level, and the multiverse. Now that I have covered the state of the MCU from 2019 to some of the projects in 2022, I realized that it will be easier for you to digest everything that's been going on in the past 6 years if I made it into 2 parts. So I will wrap it up in the next video. Stay tuned for that. If you enjoy my take, please make sure to like this one and have a good one.